Forgive Me Father 2 is a boomer shooter sequel developed by Byte Barrel and published by Fulcrum Publishing that sends players into a head-banging journey through a Lovecraftian cosmic horror nightmare. This is a follow-up to 2021's visually enticing but bare-bones FPS that wastes no time raising the bar the minute you pick up your first shell-shaded gun. With more eye candy, tighter gunplay, catchier music, and a wealth of levels ripe for exploration, it's clear Byte Barrel did what it could to make its tentacles slimier and guts bloodier. However, with all of the upgrades is an ocean of growing pains that hold down an otherwise unique and engaging experience. Forgive Me Father 2 ditches the dual protagonist structure of the first game to focus on only one of its original leads, the priest. The story relies less on environmental notes, though there are some still to be found, and more on back and forth interactions between our troubled hero and the somehow gravelier voice stuck inside his head.
What kind of devilry is this?
It's a serviceable tale with a handful of choices to make that I enjoyed mulling over as I mowed down mold-colored monsters, but it's also an element that can be ignored if you want to focus on the meat and potatoes the experience brings to the table. There's a decent chance you're watching this video because Forgive Me Father 2's art suckered you into clicking the thumbnail, and yeah, that's totally fair. You might be happy to hear that style litters every corner of the 20-ish levels you're given to plow through. Despite the stunning amount of visual variety between each location, every stop manages to fit into a compact and appropriately gross package. I will say that, gameplay-wise, most of these levels end up as little more than shooting galleries with different set dressing, but there were a few toward the midway point that surprised me in the best way. 2 levels, one that had me tiptoeing around explosive barrels and another that tasked me with chasing down a boss that hurled laser walls at my character, were highlights of the bunch. The hard truth, though, is that Forgive Me Father 2's biggest strength is also its biggest weakness. Some maps are cool on the surface, but lose their sheen as you dive deeper in, especially when larger hordes are tossed your way. The rush of finding collectibles in Doom-style secret rooms would often be stamped out as I became lost in cramped hallways and arenas. Ammunition drops are small and often indistinguishable from one another, making it nearly impossible to know what you're picking up among the chaos. I wasn't always left feeling directionless, but found that losing my place in these Borderlands-like settings happened too often to ignore. One late-game level filled with glowing mushrooms was specifically frustrating, as monsters faded into the environment so well that it made it nearly impossible to see them. I know Lovecraft fans love them some tentacles, but Forgive Me Father 2 leans so heavily on its style that it can sometimes feel like you're fighting through a mushy plate of spaghetti instead of Cthulhu's army. I want to clarify that while too many areas don't come together quite like they should, there are absolutely aspects of this game that shine. Outside of 1 or 2 weapons, every gun isn't only useful but an absolute joy to see in action. I spent so much time watching the meticulously crafted reload animations for some of the weirder weapons and was always excited to see how exactly my enemies would be ripped apart upon unlocking a new tool. The same goes for abilities granted by the Dark Tome, which offers magical powers that can be synergized to keep you standing in a pinch. Most times, Forgive Me Father 2 feels good to play, and that's thanks in part to the onslaught of enemies to learn and master. Nearly everyone you come across has some interesting wrinkle to adapt to, and the unique roster of monsters thrown your way expands up until the game's final moments. Even your basic zombie-like targets have a unique property that sees them replacing their head after you've blown it clean off. I definitely didn't love every enemy type introduced. I'm looking at those invincible hopping guys who shoot explosives, but you can't help but admire the variety on display, especially when every creature has so much fun detail up close. Then there's Forgive Me Father 2's glorious soundtrack. Although I didn't vibe with every moment in the game itself, hearing how every level started with simple tunes that eventually culminated in a heavy metal banger has me already on the lookout for a vinyl release. Forgive Me Father 2 is a good game that could use quite a bit of cleaning up. I wanted to love it but just liked it, so while I'm happy I reached the credits, I don't think I'll be going back for a New Game Plus run to test out different story choices or experiment with every weapon combination. Should Forgive Me Father 3 worm its way into the world, I'll be there day one. After about a year in early access, Forgive Me Father 2 is out now for $24.99 on PC.